Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Take 5 for Torah. That means we're answering a question that has to do with the parsha that says, why do we do that? In this parsha, Miriam passes away, and it says, Vatamas Miriam, and immediately Vatikaver. Immediately she was buried without any delay. And this is consistent with the custom in Judaism to not put off burial unless very strong constraints for family members to get there. But Miriam's whole family, Moshe and Aaron, were right there. And immediately upon her death, we're told that the Israelites thirsted. And that's how Chazal determined that the water, the be'er that followed them in the desert, that served all of their thirsting needs, all of their needs for water, and I'm sure there must have been great need in the desert for all those years, was all in the merit of Miriam. It makes sense. She stood by the water for her baby brother in the very beginning of the story of this family, the beginning of Shmos in chapter 2, and that served her to be the one in charge of the water for Israel, so that when she died, the water just was no longer there. The Be'er returned in the merit of Moshe, but for the time being they thirsted, and that led to the terrible story involving the hitting the rock. They didn't even give Moshe a moment to grieve for his sister. They started to complain to him, and the rest of that story will be for some other time. But for now, we have the custom, and it's brought down in Shulchan Aruch, that when a family hears about any loss for whom they would sit Shiva, any gathering of water in the house, if you have a pitcher of water, you have even a glass of water, you spill it out. Right? It doesn't have to be juice or soda or wine or other things, but water has to be spilled out from any collected area in the house in deference to what happened to Miriam when she died and there was no water. There is another custom, very interestingly, that there is a hierarchy of who should be buried first when a community has more than one person to bury. And today we have a lot of funeral homes, so obviously the first person to call, gets the chapel first. But when you have one community, and there could be a hierarchy of how soon the person could be buried. There's only one cemetery for the entire community. This is why you see certain halachos where everybody in town has to go to the cemetery for the funeral, because everybody knows everybody. Today, some of these laws might be different. No one can go to every funeral in the city. But the custom is in Shulchan Aruch that whenever there is a question of burying two different people and who came first, who's more honorable, or anything of that sort, the woman always goes first. It's a fascinating halacha. There's the Rosh Yeshiva to bury and a homeless woman to bury at the same time. The woman always goes first. I'm sure there might be other considerations today with our Chevra Kadishas and other things of that sort, but when all things are equal, the women always are to be buried first, simply because it says, Vatamas Miriam Vatikaver. She was buried immediately. Women always go first in such a setting. There's also, Chazal tell us that this took place on the 10th of Nisan, which is already a date mentioned in the Torah, because it says that the Jews were told to tie up a goat or a sheep, to a lamb, to prepare to sacrifice for the Korban Pesach, and 4 days later they offered it. So we commemorate this miracle that the Egyptians saw the God they worshipped being tied up by the Israelites, and they did nothing. They were powerless to do anything about it. So that miracle is always observed on the Shabbos before Pesach. It's called Shabbos HaGadol. Everybody always asks, the Torah presents, we usually commemorate events on the calendar date, not the day of the week. The day we commemorate this event that took place on the 10th of Nisan did indeed take place on a Shabbos. We left Egypt on a Thursday. but we should commemorate it on the 10th of Nisan whenever it falls, regardless of the day of the week. So the poskim tell us that if we commemorated this on the 10th of Nisan, it would bump into the date of Miriam's Yortzeit, and we would not commemorate it properly. So we keep this one on the day of the week, the Shabbos before Pesach. We crossed into Israel on the 10th of Nisan. We don't want to confuse what actually took place on this date. So we do not commemorate the original 10th of Nisan, the day we tied up the Korban Pesach, on the calendar date, but the day of the week on that Shabbos. All this has to do with what is recorded in this week's Parsha, the death of Miriam. May her memory be a blessing for us. May we always be blessed with abundant water and rain continuously in her merit.